The first time it happened, I thought it was just a bad dream. Now, honestly, I'm not so sure anymore. My name is Daniel. I'm 29 years old, and I live alone in a small apartment in Lima. What I'm about to tell you started as something any doctor could explain. It ended as something I still don't know how to name. I'm not a writer. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not an expert in anything. I'm just a regular person who started waking up in the middle of the night, unable to move, seeing things that sat on my bed, hearing voices, feeling something breathing right against my ear. And the worst part is that over time, those things stopped staying only in the night. I'm going to tell you everything exactly as I remember it, step by step. I live in an old building, the kind that still has an iron-gated elevator and thin walls where you can hear almost everything happening in the hallway. My apartment is small. One bedroom, a living room that doubles as a dining room, a tiny kitchen, a bathroom. That's it. My bedroom faces the street. At night, the streetlights come in. You hear cars, motorcycles, the occasional drunk shouting on the corner. Nothing strange for Lima. I've always slept with the bedroom door half open, more out of habit than anything else. And my phone charging on the nightstand. Before all of this started, I slept fine. I went to bed late, sure, but nothing unusual. A little phone time, some horror videos, social media, then sleep. I had never had trouble falling asleep until that night. It was a Tuesday, I remember, because I had an important work meeting the next day. I fell asleep around 1 a.m, staring at the ceiling, thinking about nothing in particular, everything normal. At some point, I don't know how long after, I opened my eyes. The first thing I felt was wrong. I was completely awake, but something didn't add up. I tried to turn my head to check the time on my phone. That's when I realized I couldn't move anything. Not my arms, not my legs, not my head. It was as if someone had pressed a button and switched off my entire body. At first, I thought, I'm dreaming. I tried to speak, even just a hey or a what's going on. But my mouth didn't respond. I could breathe, but each breath felt heavy, like something was resting on my chest. The feeling was strange. I was conscious. I could hear the cars outside, the motorcycle that always passes at that hour, even a dog barking somewhere far away. But my body was completely off. That's when the fear started. I'm the kind of person who gets scared, but tries not to show it. In that moment, I was in complete internal panic. Then I felt it. Someone in the room. I hadn't heard anyone come in, no footsteps, nothing. It was just suddenly there. The way you know someone is standing behind you even though you haven't seen them. My room was half dark, with that yellow light that comes in from the street. I couldn't see anyone standing by the bed, but the feeling was there. I was not alone. I wanted to close my eyes, but that was hard too. It was like my eyelids weighed a ton. Then something pressed down on my chest. It wasn't a normal hand. It wasn't an even weight. It was like something sitting down on top of me, at an angle, right at the level of my lungs. The air left me. I tried to scream. Nothing came out. Just an internal sound, like trying to speak underwater. The pressure increased. And then I clearly felt a breath that wasn't mine. Slow breathing right against my face, like someone was literally on top of me, looking at me up close. I stared at the ceiling, unable to move a single finger. I started to sweat. And then something else happened. In the corner of the room, beside the wardrobe, I saw a shadow. At first I thought it was just that, a shadow from the light outside. But no, the shadow had a shape. It looked like a very tall person, taller than the wardrobe, with long arms pressed against the wall, watching me. It wasn't moving. It was just there. I felt that if I could close my eyes, everything would go away. But I couldn't even do that. The other breathing got closer, and then I heard something. A whisper right at my ear. I didn't understand the words. It was a fast murmur, much higher pitched than normal. I thought I was going to die. I genuinely thought that. Then everything snapped off. I could move my toe, then my leg, then my arm. I sat up gasping, like I'd been pulled out of water. The room was exactly as it always was. Nobody there. The shadow in the corner was gone. I looked at my phone. 3:17 a.m. That was my first sleep paralysis episode. At the time, I didn't know that name. I only knew I had just lived through one of the worst minutes of my life. The next day, I went to work like a zombie. Tired, headache, and every time I closed my eyes, I saw the shadow pressed against the wardrobe. When I got home, I did what everyone does. I searched Google. I wake up and can't move. I feel something on top of me while I sleep. Things like that. That's where I found the term sleep paralysis. I read that it was something normal that happens to a lot of people. That it's when the brain wakes up but the body is still asleep, that you're not going to die. That it usually lasts seconds or a couple of minutes. It also said you can have hallucinations, see shadows, hear voices, feel a presence. The classic, something got on top of you while you slept. That was basically it. I closed my phone feeling a little calmer. Okay, it was something in my mind. Stress, bad sleep, normal, I told myself. I didn't tell anyone. I was embarrassed. It sounded ridiculous. I saw a shadow in my room. That night, I went to sleep thinking it wasn't going to happen again. I was wrong. The second time was 3 days later. The third time was a week after that. And then it started happening almost every night. The pattern was almost always the same. I'd lie down, fall asleep, and at some point I'd open my eyes unable to move. The pressure on my chest became constant. I already knew what was coming. The foreign breathing, the presence in the room, the shadow. The strange thing was that each time it seemed to try something new. One night, instead of feeling something sit on top of me, I felt something grab my ankles. Not a cramp, nothing like that. The clear sensation of cold hands holding my feet, and slowly they started pulling me toward the edge of the bed. I could feel my body sliding, centimeter by centimeter, but I couldn't do anything to stop it. I held my breath, tried to move even one finger. Nothing. I felt like my heel was already hanging in the air, about to go off the mattress. Then, the invisible snap again. Everything switched off and back on. I could move. I sat up. I was in the exact same spot I always was. Hadn't moved an inch. It's your head, I kept telling myself. Hallucinations. Calm down. But the fear didn't leave. I started being afraid to sleep. I stayed up late watching videos, anything to avoid closing my eyes. And when sleep finally took me, I knew there was a good chance I'd go through it all again. My life started to suffer. I was late to work, irritable, falling asleep on the bus. My body was exhausted, but my mind didn't want to sleep, because sleeping meant getting trapped again. And as if that wasn't enough, things got worse. In the beginning, the shadow I saw was just that, a dark smear without much detail. Over time, it started to take shape. In one episode, I opened my eyes and saw it clearly. It was no longer pressed against the wardrobe. It was closer to the bed. The streetlight gave it some contour. It was a tall figure, bony, like someone who was far too thin. The arms were long, almost reaching the knees. What I remember most is the head. I'm not going to lie and say I saw a perfectly clear face. It was the opposite. Where features should have been, there was a kind of hollow, darker than the darkness of the room. But there was something else. 2 points. 2 small, bright points where I suspected the eyes were. They didn't glow like a flashlight or anything like that. It was more subtle, like the way light reflects off an animal's eyes in the dark. The figure wasn't moving. It was just standing there watching. The pressure on my chest increased. This time, along with the foreign breathing, I heard a strange sound, a low hum. It wasn't coming from outside, not from the street. I felt it in my head, as if it were inside my skull. I tried to close my eyes. Couldn't. I tried to scream. Nothing. And then that thing took a step. It was a minimal movement, but I felt it like it had moved a full meter closer. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. I had the feeling that if it took one more step, it would be right up against the bed. I don't know how long it lasted, but for me, it felt like hours. When I could finally move again, I sat up, turned on the light, and checked every corner of the room. Nothing. Not a shadow out of place. I slept the rest of that night with the light on. Seeing something is one thing. Hearing something is another. After several weeks of almost daily episodes, the sound started. First, it was footsteps. Soft steps in the hallway, right outside my door. I thought it was a neighbor, but those footsteps stopped directly in front of my room and just stayed there. Paralyzed in bed, I could clearly feel the presence on the other side of the door, like it was deciding whether to come in or not. On another occasion, what I heard were whispers, not clear voices like when someone speaks loudly, more like murmurs, as if a group of people were talking quietly in the living room. The strange thing is that in the middle of that mix of sounds, I sometimes heard my name, very clearly. Daniel. The first time I thought I'd imagined it. The second time too. But when you get to the 4th or 5th time, you start to doubt yourself. One night, mid-paralysis, the voices grew louder. It was like they were surrounding my bed. I couldn't understand what they were saying. I only caught a few loose words. Come, look at me. Open. I tried to focus on my breathing, on counting, on anything that would make me stop hearing. But it was impossible. The worst was when I heard something in my left ear, a voice different from the rest. Deeper, slower. It said clearly, "You're not dreaming anymore." I felt a cold that rose from my feet to my head. When I recovered movement, my chest hurt, as if something had genuinely been pressing down on it with force. Up to that point, everything could still be explained as sleep paralysis, hallucinations, stress, whatever you want. Unpleasant, yes, but normal. The problem was when things started leaving marks. One morning, I woke up, went to the bathroom, looked in the mirror, and noticed something strange on my neck. 3 red marks, almost straight, like someone had dragged their nails across it. Not deep scratches, nothing like that, but visible. I checked my own hands to see if I'd done it in my sleep, but my nails were cut short. Besides, the marks ran in a strange direction, from the jaw down toward the collarbone, as if coming from above. I told myself maybe I'd scratched against something in the night, without remembering. I let it go. A few days later, again, this time on my chest. 2 parallel marks, exactly where I always felt the pressure. I couldn't play dumb anymore. I started checking the sheets, the bed, the mattress, looking for anything that could be causing them. I found nothing. It was around this time that I had one of the worst episodes of all. That night, I came home completely drained. Heavy day, work, traffic, everything. I lay down, wanting nothing, lights off. I don't know what time it was, but I opened my eyes and immediately knew I was trapped again, couldn't move, couldn't speak. Breathing was heavy, but this time it was different. I felt a hand on my forehead, cold, thin, not the sensation of someone touching me from a distance. Direct contact, skin against skin, or whatever that was. The hand slid across my face, moved down my cheek, and stopped at my throat. The pressure increased slowly. I couldn't swallow, couldn't breathe properly. It was like being strangled, but without fingers, without sudden force. More like a band tightening, little by little. While that was happening, the shadow was there, not just in the corner this time, right beside the bed, closer than it had ever been, almost touching the edge, not leaning over me or anything, just standing there, watching. I felt tears running from my eyes, but I couldn't move my face to wipe them. At some point, the pressure on my neck shifted to my chest, and then I felt something I still have trouble describing today. It was like someone was reaching a hand inside my chest, but without breaking anything. A strange internal pain mixed with cold. I had the very clear sensation that something was searching for something inside me. Not the lungs, not the heart, like it was digging through. The voices came back. But this time, they weren't scattered whispers. They were right next to my ear. Several people speaking at the same time, overlapping. And from inside all that noise, one phrase repeated itself over and over. "We can see you." All I wanted was to wake up. I felt that if that episode lasted a little longer, I was going to have a heart attack right there. I don't know how much time passed. It could have been seconds, but I felt it like half an hour. When I could finally move, I sat up so fast I almost fell out of the bed. My chest was burning, my throat hurt. I went to the bathroom for water. When I looked in the mirror, I saw something that left me frozen. Marks on my chest again, but now they were darker, almost purple, like something had pressed hard into a single point. I slept the rest of that night, sitting up in bed with the light on. I wouldn't lie back down. At that point, I was seriously thinking about seeing a doctor. But before that happened, there was one detail that finally broke me. One Saturday, I was going through my phone, clearing up space, deleting old photos and videos. In the middle of all that, I found a video I didn't remember recording. It was a clip of about 20 seconds, recorded at night with the front camera. On the screen you could see my dark room with very little light coming from the street. Not much was visible, just the bed and the outline of my body lying there. In the background, you could hear my breathing, heavier than normal, like I was agitated. At second 8, a strange sound, like a soft knock on the wall. At second 10, something moved in the lower part of the screen, hard to see clearly, but it looked like a shadow passing from the edge of the bed toward the door. At the end of the video, a whisper. One single word, very close to the microphone. So close it distorted slightly. Wake up. The video ended there. I swear I don't remember setting anything to record that night. I don't even know when the camera activated. I could say I did it half asleep, or that it was a mistake. But in that moment, genuinely, I stopped feeling safe. This wasn't just something my mind was inventing while I slept. Something had been recorded. I couldn't keep it all to myself. One day at work, during lunch, I told a friend. I told him everything, the paralysis, what I saw, what I heard, the marks, the video. I showed him the clip. He was quiet for a moment. Then he told me it was probably sleep paralysis, that he'd seen similar cases online, that it wasn't a demon or anything like that. He told me to see a doctor, sleep better, put the phone down before bed, stop watching so many horror videos. The usual logical things. I nodded along, but inside, none of it was convincing me. At night, in my bed with the lights off, logical explanations don't do much. All I really wanted was for it to stop. There was one episode in particular that was different from all the others. To this day, I don't know if it was a dream inside a dream, or something worse. That night, I lay down on my back. I tried not to think, to relax, to focus on my breathing, the way I'd read about online. At some point, as always, I opened my eyes again, heavy body, couldn't move. Okay, here we go again, I thought. But this time there was no pressure on my chest or my throat at first. What I felt was different, like something was pulling my body downward, not toward the edge of the bed like before, downward, literally, like the mattress was sinking and swallowing me. I felt my back pressing deeper and deeper into the mattress, like I was merging with it. The ceiling looked farther and farther away, as if I were descending. The shadow was there, but now it wasn't just in one corner. It was like the entire room had become shadow, except for the space where I was. I started hearing a strange sound, a low hum mixed with a high-pitched ringing. I can't explain it properly, but it was unbearable. And then I was no longer in my room. Not that I teleported or anything like that, but the sensation changed completely. I couldn't feel the bed beneath me anymore. I couldn't feel anything. It was like being suspended in darkness. No walls, no ceiling, nothing. Just the sensation of being somewhere, floating. And that's when I saw it. The figure was no longer just a tall shadow. It had a more defined shape, still blurry, but there, in front of me, at a distance I couldn't measure because there were no reference points. It had no face. But I could clearly feel it was looking at me. In that moment, I felt a fear I had never felt in my life. Not fear of dying, fear of staying there, trapped, with no body, with that thing as my only company. I tried to scream. I had no voice. I tried to move. I had no body. Then The thing got slightly closer. It didn't walk. It didn't float. It was just nearer. And I heard something, not with my ears, directly inside my head. I told you, you're not dreaming anymore. It was like a blow. In that instant, I felt like I was falling. The way you do when you wake from a nightmare and your body jerks. I opened my eyes. I was in my bed, in my room, paralyzed again, heart pounding. The chest pressure came back all at once, like something had sat down on top of me. I don't know how, but that time I managed to move a finger faster than usual. With a huge effort, I shifted and sat up, soaked in sweat, chest hurting. I looked at my phone. 3:33 a.m. I didn't sleep again that night. I could tell you I went to the doctor, got medication, and everything got better. That'll be a nice ending. But it wouldn't be true. I did go to a general practitioner. I described some of the symptoms: the paralysis, the chest pressure, the sudden wake-ups. She told me it was likely sleep paralysis, that I should rest better, regulate my schedule, and that if it continued, she could refer me to a sleep specialist. I didn't tell her about the shadow, or the voices, or the video. I was embarrassed. I've tried to follow the advice. Lighter dinners, no phone before bed, no coffee at night. It's gotten somewhat better. There are nights when nothing happens and I sleep fine. And there are other nights when it comes back, sometimes mild, just the paralysis and the sensation of someone in the room, and sometimes strong, chest pressure, voices, shadows. What changed is that now, even without paralysis, I often feel watched. I'll be in the living room watching something on TV, and out of nowhere, I'll get that feeling, like someone is standing in the bedroom doorway. I turn around and obviously there's nothing there, but the feeling doesn't leave. I've started talking out loud to myself, saying things like, "Let me go. Let me sleep in peace. Don't bother me tonight." I don't know if it does anything, but sometimes, after I say it, the nights feel calmer. If you've made it this far, you might be asking yourself whether all of this is just stress, sleep deprivation, or my mind working against me. Maybe. The experts say sleep paralysis is something physical that happens in the brain, that there's nothing supernatural about it. And I'm not going to argue with them. But here in my room at 3 a.m, when I can't move a single finger, when I feel something sitting on my chest, when I hear my name whispered in my ear, and I see that shadow standing next to my wardrobe, it's hard to believe it's just a glitch in my brain. You know what the worst part is? I'm no longer sure where the dream ends and reality begins. There are nights when I wake up normally, get up, go to the bathroom, look in the mirror, and then suddenly, without warning, I open my eyes again in bed, paralyzed, as if I had woken up inside another waking. That's why I started telling this story. Because if something like this ever happens to you, I want you to know you're not alone. It might be nothing more than a sleep disorder. There might be a logical explanation for everything I just told you. But when you're there, trapped, unable to move, feeling a presence at the edge of your bed, watching a shadow standing in the corner of your room, you'll remember something I learned the hard way. Whatever you call it, demon, hallucination, brain malfunction, whatever. What you feel, you feel. And when the shadow leans just a little closer toward you, when the foreign breath brushes against your face, when that voice whispers in your ear, you're not dreaming anymore. In that moment, at least for a few seconds, your entire world becomes exactly that. Just you, your bed, and something you can't quite see, deciding whether tonight it lets you wake up or not.